Why don't we go ahead and get started? So welcome everyone to today's Live On Now session, 4 easy steps to process improvements. Today, we'll be quickly introducing everyone to ServiceNow's in-platform process mining solution. And we'll also be walking you through all you need to get started with process mining at your organization. So from plugin activation to project creation, to using the analyst workbench, to closing the loop with continual improvement management initiatives. So we'll go through the steps and concepts first in slides, and then we'll jump into an instance and we'll do some of them live together. We do a lot of these types of sessions, and based on the feedback, this structure of slides first, then jumping in and showing some of the same concepts live seems to be working for people. And the beauty of it is we'll do all of this together in less than an hour. This is the slide that I have to put up here that says anything I say and do here today can't be held against me in the court of law. Also, the slide that says, hey, as part of these conversations, if we happen to make any forward-looking statements about things that might be coming on the ServiceNow platform, you should take them as forward-looking statements, make no decisions based on them whatsoever, because they're always subject to change. And at this point, I'm assuming you've read the fine print. Now, we always like to start these sessions with a quote. If this happens to be your first time joining us for a process mining session, it's just something we like to do. And for this session, we chose this one from the legendary UCLA basketball coach, John Wooden. An organization's ability to learn and translate that learning into action rapidly is the ultimate competitive advantage. And we like this quote because, one, it aligns to why we're here today, to learn a little bit more about the ServiceNow platform, take that knowledge, apply it, and get more value out of your investment in ServiceNow. But it also aligns to what you'll learn, how you can quickly and easily start taking advantage of the in-platform process mining solution to get insights into where there are actionable process improvement opportunities that will help your organizations run more efficiently and stay ahead of the competition. What we'll do here today, we'll do a quick little process mining 101 for our newcomers. Then we'll go through the 4 easy steps, right? Plugin activation, create a project together. We'll show you some of the things you can use in the process mining workspace and the analyst workbench to help you find those process improvement opportunities. And then we'll kind of close the loop by creating a continual improvement management initiative. We'll talk about all those things in slides, and then we'll do that quick little demonstration. We'll get your questions answered. Just as a note around the questions, please put your questions in the Q&A as we go through the content here today. My colleagues on the phone, Damien Pascal, he'll be addressing them as best he can in real time, and then we'll check back at the end and we'll pick a few of them to answer live for the larger audience as a whole. And then lastly, we'll wrap up with some additional resources for you to learn a little bit more above and beyond today. As I just mentioned, I have a teammate here with me today. So I'll introduce myself first. My name is Dan Grady. I'm part of the process mining product management team here at ServiceNow. With me today is Damien Pascal. He's also a member of our team. And as I just mentioned, he's going to be handling the Q&A for us. So please get those questions in there as they come up. All right, let's start with that quick little process mining 101 for those who this might be their first exposure to the topic. So with everything we do, there's a designed and desired path in our minds for how it should work and how things should play out, whether that be planning a session like this Live On Now webinar that we're doing, or a business process. And when you design things, you design for both efficiency as well as completeness to provide the best experience possible for as many people as possible. Now, unfortunately, what we design isn't always what ends up happening in reality. The reality is not all work is going to be flowing through the optimal path. And that's going to have a negative impact on the experience both people requesting a service might be having, as well as the people that are trying to deliver that service. But identifying what is actually happening, the reality of what's going on within our processes and then improving them, isn't always easy and obvious. What process mining allows us to do is use the audit log data that's generated as work moves through a given process. And then we use that data to create a visual representation of what's actually happening within that process. And this new level of visibility is going to help us accelerate our ability to identify inefficiencies, non-conformant process activities, and in general, improvement opportunities. So Process mining gives us the ability to answer process questions that have historically been very challenging for us to answer. So whereas traditional analytics helps us answer a lot of the what questions about our processes, like how many tickets, incidents, cases, whatever they might be, did we work? Which types were they? How long did it take to close those things? And how did we perform against our targets? And probably most importantly, are we improving our cycle times? These are all super important questions that people use dashboards to help them answer. The challenge is most people see those things in the dashboards and they want to ask follow-up questions, right? Like, why are our numbers moving in that direction? Why are we missing our targets? And the answers to those follow-up why questions very often don't live in those dashboards. This is where process mining comes in. Process mining helps us to start answering those why. So things like, where is the process getting stuck? Where is there unnecessary rework happening? Where is work ping-ponging between different groups and teams? And where aren't we conforming to the process that we designed? These are all things that have historically been a little bit more challenging to answer and then act upon. But they're now available to us in just a couple of clicks, and you're going to learn those clicks today as part of this session. We like to say that process mining is going to get you to the why behind all of your KPIs. And in doing so, it's going to empower everyone involved in a process to make data-driven decisions, or decision-centric. We call it decision-centric analytics, about which improvements to make and prioritize and which ones to tackle first. All right, that's the quick little 101 to what process mining is for those that were not familiar with the concept. Now that you're curious and you probably want to learn more, let's go through the 4 easy steps you can take to get started immediately. All right, so step 1, like with most solutions on the ServiceNow platform, we need to activate the plugins. So which plugins do you need to activate, you ask? Well, the first and most important plugin is the process mining plugin that gets you the core process mining capability. You should see this in your application manager, and if it's not there, you can find it on the store. Just search for process mining. The actual plugin technical name is com.sn_PO, a little history, process mining history. Process mining was originally named process optimization. That is where the PO comes from. One important note, process mining is only going to be available for customers that are at our professional level and above, meaning you should have at least one professional level entitlement on your instance to use process mining. It could be ITSM professional, CSM professional, HR professional, etc. The reason I call that out is that if you go and you start installing the process mining on your sub-production instance to try it out, which you are totally entitled to do, you can install this in sub-prod and try it out. You're going to notice that the plugin will also install the predictive intelligence plugin, since process mining uses the same machine learning infrastructure in your data center as solutions like predictive and task intelligence. So this is the main plugin that you need to go and turn on. And like I said, you can do it in your sub-production environment as soon as we're off the call here today to try it out. Now, in addition to the core process mining plugin, there are also workflow-based content packs to help you get some initial content set up on your instance to jumpstart the process analysis that you want to do. There are content packs for ITSM, customer service management, HR service delivery, field service management, financial services optimization, strategic portfolio management, procurement and supply chain. Depending on what workflows you're running on the platform, it is in your best interest to activate the appropriate content packs. They're going to get you an initial process configuration record for tables like incident, requested item, customer service, HR case. All right, these process configuration records have out-of-the-box improvement opportunities that will get surfaced when you mine records in each of these specific tables. These improvement opportunities are a huge help. They also come with some sample projects to get you going. So you'll, of course, adjust the samples based on your specific scenarios, but it's always better to start with something than nothing. That's it. That's all you need to do to turn process mining on in your instance, that core plugin, and then you're going to want to start turning on these content packs for the appropriate workflows that you're using. Now, I'm going backwards in the slide, I think. Yep. Perfect. Oh, no, I'm not. This is what I wanted to show you. Now, before we move to step 2 and create our project, there's one important topic that we need to cover. Process mining uses data that lives in the audit logs on the ServiceNow platform to generate the visualized process map and discover the inefficiencies and opportunities to improve. So for those that aren't familiar with the audit log, as a record moves through a process on the ServiceNow platform, things on that record change, like the state, the assignment group, maybe the priority. And all these changes, along with the timestamps of when they occurred, they get captured in the audit log. So in order to effectively use process mining, we need to have that audit log data available to us. If you're going to be trying out process mining in your sub-production environment, you need to make sure that the audit log data is available there. And the reason I bring this up is that most customers don't bring the audit log data over as part of their standard clone down process because in the past, there was no real reason to do that. In fact, in the clone request record, exclude audit log data is checked by default. So if you're interested in trying process mining out in your sub-production environment, make sure you uncheck that box before submitting your next clone request. This is a key part of kind of step one before you move to step two is, and if you're not the person that does this, just check with your platform owner or administrator and say, hey, I'm interested in trying out this process mining solution. Next time we clone down, can we include the audit log data and maybe even point them at this presentation or this slide? Now, if you're interested in validating whether the audit data is there on an instance, you can go to any record and view the history and the list view of that history. And what you're looking for in the audit history list is multiple values and changes for fields like state and assignment group. If you see examples of work moving through the process, you should be good to go from a data perspective. This is certainly something you don't have to worry about in your production environment, but I know many of you are going to want to try this in your sub-prod first. So I thought it was important that we include this in the session here today. Now, on to step two, creating our first process mining project. In reality, once you get past the cloning with the audit log data step, the work that was going to take the longest for you is done, right? Everything we do from now on is super simple. So creating a process mining project is a 5-minute exercise. So after the plugin is activated, you're going to see in your instance a process mining workspace in your list of workspaces. And depending on what content packs you've activated, you'll see some sample projects in that workspace once you launch it. You could always open them, explore, make adjustments, and hit the mine button on those. But it's just as easy to create a new one. And you'll see a create new project button in the upper right-hand corner of that workspace. You'll be taken to the process mining project guided setup experience. On the first screen, you're going to give your project a descriptive name that describes the analysis this project will be used for. Then you'll pick the appropriate table from the process you're interested in mining. Could be incident, customer service, HR case, requested item. As long as auditing is turned on, you'll see the table in the list. And then there's also templates and enablement materials right there in the experience to help guide you if you're interested in diving into any of those. After your table is selected, you're going to start to scope your analysis, which is another way of saying filter the data for your use case and include the appropriate fields to help you work with the data once you get to the analyst workbench. So just like building a report on the ServiceNow platform, you'll add filter criteria to narrow down your data for, let's say, the last 3 months for a specific category of case. And just as a note, unlike machine learning solutions in which we're training models to predict outcomes, with process mining, you don't need a ton of data. You just want a relevant set of data for the process you're interested in. Remember, you're just trying to improve the process as it's performing now, not 7 years ago. So usually a month or a quarter is a good amount of data to identify opportunities. You'll also choose your activities on this screen. What are the things that are changing over time that you want to visualize on the map? Usually we start with looking at things like state and assignment group analysis. Then you'll pick some breakdowns, the things that you want to slice and dice the process map by after you've run the project. Those are things like category, priority, location. It's all really, really straightforward. And again, you'll see us do this in a minute or maybe 3 minutes. We've got a couple more slides. Then one of the more powerful parts of the process mining solution is its ability to immediately surface improvement opportunities. And there are two types of improvement opportunities that can be added to a process mining project: rule-based and automated. Improvement opportunities surface things like process bottlenecks, rework, non-conformant scenarios, and we provide several improvement opportunities as part of those workflow-specific content packs. And you'll have the opportunity to import them into your project, but you can also create your own improvement opportunities to align with your specific use cases. And the screen that you're looking at on here kind of is that guided setup experience within the overall project guided setup experience to help you configure your additional rule-based and automated improvement opportunities on top of the ones that we provide. Really, really easy to do, literally a couple of clicks before you start getting some of these insights. That's it. That's what goes into configuring a process mining project on the ServiceNow platform. So whereas traditional approaches to process mining might take weeks or months, requiring a whole bunch of data modeling, access issues, and extraction techniques, you'll be done with that in minutes and then start using that valuable time to dig into your visualized process and start identifying the opportunities to improve. On to step 3, identifying process improvement opportunities. This is where the fun really starts. I've actually had customers comment to me that they are addicted to process mining. Like, working with your process data is like having a conversation. So based on what surfaced initially by process mining, you're going to have a whole bunch of follow-up questions. And based on the answers to those questions, you'll have more questions, and you'll go back and forth with the process map and the data. And there's a number of ways that a process mining project enables this conversation that you're having with your data. And we're not going to be able to cover them all today, but I'll call out a few highlights and then point you at some recorded sessions where you can dive deeper if you want. So every process mining project is going to have a minimum of 2 tabs: a summary and insights tab and the analyst workbench. Now, while the analyst workbench contains the map, the visual that gets everyone excited, the summary and insights page has a lot of information that will help us get the conversation started with our project data. So as of the Washington release, you're going to be immediately presented with 2 project metric visualizations on this page for the data that you mined. The first one will be a closure time trend for the work you mined, and the second is going to be a histogram that breaks the work up into buckets of closure times. These are really just meant to help the person doing the analysis get a high-level understanding of the data that they just mined. Then, as of the Xanadu release, we've again started to include the variation analysis on the summary and insights page. Variation analysis helps us understand all of the different routes work is taking to get to closure. Which routes are being taken most often, which routes have the most steps, which routes are taking the longest. This is all useful information to help us understand how well we are conforming to the design path that we set up and where the opportunities to rein things in are. The summary and insights page is also where all of the improvement opportunities will be surfaced. Remember, improvement opportunities will surface things like specific process scenarios you configured process mining to look for, or take advantage of, maybe let's say those automated pattern detectors like rework, extra step, ping pong, or slow transitions. There's going to be some visualizations that will categorize these improvement opportunities by type and any KPIs that you've linked them to. But the real power is in the details per improvement opportunity. You'll see how many records met the criteria or scenario. You'll also get the overall inefficiency in terms of time. This information is going to help you get a sense of the magnitude of the opportunity in relation to the others and help you prioritize whether it's worth acting on and digging into each of these opportunities a little bit deeper. These opportunities are great conversation starters, and right from each, if you want to continue the conversation, you can drill down into the analyst workbench and start to ask your follow-up questions about the opportunity. And then we go to the analyst workbench. This is where we really start to dig in, slice and dice, start to isolate inefficiencies and actions we can take to improve. The breakdowns, they're going to allow us to use structured data like categories, subcategories, locations, priority groups, services, to better understand the data from a volume and velocity perspective, and then drill down into different areas. Transition filters, they allow us to specify specific steps and transitions we want to focus on. Now, these are different than your traditional filters that only allow us to look at the final record. With these transition filters, we can filter based on what's happened during the process. Very handy for doing analysis of work that took longer to start, but once we started was very relatively easy to complete. Not easy for me to say, but relatively easy for us to complete. Now, that's a subset that is a feeding ground for automation opportunities, right? You've got a bottleneck analysis, which highlights details of each transition in the process. The histogram helps us focus on outliers that might be impacting our duration numbers or where there may be pockets of opportunities. From anywhere on the visualized process map, whether it be a node or an arc, you'll always have the ability to get down to the detailed records themselves. This is a huge advantage because the actions you're going to take to improve will most likely be based on information you are gleaming from the records themselves. The process data is great for helping us identify where the inefficiencies are, but the detailed records are going to be where the actionable next steps live. This is another area where the in-platform approach to process mining provides a significant advantage. That direct access to the records and the ability to respect all of the existing security you've put in place to respect that access, that's a huge advantage. If you think about it, with external process mining solutions, this is going to add additional time and cost, right, to get and include this valuable information that lives in these detailed records. Again, so since we have access to the detailed records, we can also use some machine learning to help us summarize and make it easier for people to understand what is actually happening. So we can apply things like clustering on short descriptions and descriptions. And as of the Xanadu release, we can now apply that clustering to work notes as well. Again, this is where the actionable information about what to do next will live. So these capabilities are a huge, huge time saver. There's so much power in this analyst workbench capabilities that enable you to have the conversation with your process data and identify opportunities to improve. You can see how somebody could get addicted to uncovering all these opportunities. Now, we're going to jump into the instance and look at a few of these things live, but there isn't going to be time to go through them all today. So there's a whole Process Mining Academy session that digs into each of these capabilities in the workbench. And then there's also something we call the use case series. And this use case series highlights how to use these capabilities for very specific types of analysis. So be sure to check both of those things out. And both of those resources are on the community site, the ServiceNow community site. All right. Final step, creating accountability with continual improvement initiatives. So we've got this easy to get started, easy to use process mining solution in place to help us identify process improvement opportunities. And you're going to be creating projects, digging into the process data, finding actionable improvement opportunities. But then what do we do when we find these opportunities? How do we ensure that they get captured, tracked, and followed up on so the organization actually benefits from our process mining efforts, right? Look, process mining is great, but if no one actually makes an improvement based on the insights we are finding, it really doesn't add any value. It's like that old thing. If a tree falls in the woods, right? If an insight appears on a dashboard, but no one acts on it, does it really have any value? And do we really need those dashboards in the first place? That's probably a conversation for another day. The good news is there's an application on the platform called Continual Improvement Management that is designed to help amplify the sound of all these process mining insights you're finding. Continual Improvement Management, or some people like to say CIM, helps drive service excellence across the organization by providing a structured framework for initiating and tracking all improvements in a single, we'll call it improvement register. It allows us to align individual improvement initiatives with business goals to overall business strategy, and then through the workbench and dashboards, help us provide transparency for everyone involved. The data and visibility helps us make better decisions about when it comes to initiative prioritization, I should say. And it also helps us measure and communicate the value and impact of those initiatives. This continual improvement management app, it's available as part of ITSM, CSM, HR. So it means most of you probably already have access to it, even though you might not know that you have access to it. The application also allows you to directly create other types of records like changes, demands, projects, stories, if you're using any of those mechanisms for tracking and prioritizing work. And the good news is you can create these improvement initiatives from lots of different places. Maybe it's from an incident, problem, services under SPM, survey results, ideas, demands, CMDB health and GRC audit reviews, performance analytics or benchmarks. And of course, you have the ability to create these types of records or continuing improvement records from the process mining analyst workbench. I'm going to show you that in the demonstration piece. Once created, the initiatives move through a structured process where they are reviewed, classified, linked to organizational strategies and measurable goals. Effort and benefits are set, and then we use an awesome analytical capability on the platform called Spotlight to score and rank these initiatives to help us prioritize them. Phases and tasks get created and assigned to complete the improvement so we can track and monitor progress. Then once the tasks are completed, we can review these things, close and measure the success and their value. Again, we want to make sure that we're closing the loop, and there's a tool here on the platform to help you close that loop inside of your organizations. It's an important step in the process. But one more thing that I wanted to call out before we jump into this, there's another application also linked to the Process Mining Analyst Workbench that has a similar function. It's called Automation Center. So if there are specific opportunities that align to automations, like let's say an RPA bot, you can log those in Automation Center, and the app's going to help you log them through deployment. And then once deployed, it's going to help you manage the bots and track the value and ROI that they're delivering for you. So it's just another application on the platform that's good at helping you close the loop and get visibility into kind of the benefits you're getting from the process mining improvement opportunities that you're identifying. All right. That was a lot of slides. I'm sure some of you are slided out at this point. So let's jump into the instance and we'll go through some of this stuff live. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, you're going to turn on the process mining plugin. Don't forget, if you're trying this in your sub-production environment, that you're going to want to have that audit log data there before you go and you do this. You'll come here in your workspace list. Once the plugin is turned on, you're going to go to the process mining workspace. If you've turned on any of the content packs, you're going to see some sample projects available to you. But if you can use those and play with them, like I said, but let's create a new one from scratch. So we'll click this Create New Project. Now I'm going to call out what you're about to see in this demonstration is going to be using the guided setup experience for process mining projects that we introduced in the Washington release. So if you happen to be trying process mining out, you're not yet on the Washington release, guess what? You have the ability to go and it'll look a little bit different. Still going to be super easy. You can check out some of the Academy sessions that we have for kind of creating your own projects prior to the Washington release. Super easy. It's just a list and form based experience versus this nice new guided setup experience. We're going to call this project our 4 easy steps project. Give it a name, and then we'll pick a table. And as I mentioned earlier, any table that has auditing turned on is going to be available for you in this list. If for some reason you're going to mine a table and you don't see it in the list, it's probably because auditing is not turned on for that table. Good news is auditing is turned on by default for over 180 different tables on the platform. Anything pretty much extended from task is going to be available to you. There's some helpful information on the right-hand side, some handy links to get you to those process mining academies and the use case series and the FAQ that we've been talking about. There's some templates here to help you get started as well. We're not going to use those here today. We're simply going to create our project. And the next step of the project is going to be to scope our analysis. And like I mentioned earlier, what that means is, hey, let's start to isolate the data to specifically help us answer questions for our process and our use case. The first step of this scoping is just to kind of filter the data set down for your use case. As just like filtering data for building a report on the platform, right? You've got your condition builder. Now, one of the things that we like to always call out is one of the best ways to do this analysis is to focus on work that has completed the process. Could you analyze open work? Of course you could. But if you're trying to understand where there's opportunities to improve a process, you want to look at work that has went all the way through the process. And the best way to do this is set a filter of active as false. And then after that, what do you do next? Well, maybe you want to look at a certain category of work. You want to look at a certain time period of work, usually a month or a quarter, I would like to suggest. In this case here, I'm just going to add one that says, hey, you know what? I want to start filtering out anything that came in via a monitoring system or alerting system, right? So I added another filter. You can add as many filters that you want. I'm going to narrow this down. This narrows it down to about 25,000 incidents. That's good enough for me. And I'm going to hit save. So scope your data for your analysis, usually a month or a quarter's worth of data, but any way that you can narrow it down, the better off you're going to be. And then the next step is to add what is known as an activity definition. What is an activity definition? This is the thing that's changing over time on the record, right? That we want to start using to look for opportunities. Usually we start with an activity of like state. Let's look at how the work is moving from state to state in the process and see if there's any bottlenecks there. But we can also do this for things like assignment groups to look at how work is being transferred from team to team in the process. Some people like to look at priority and how things are being reprioritized potentially during a process. You can have up to 10 of these activities, or sorry, 5 of these activities per project. But the more you add, the messier the map gets. So as you start to think about adding additional activities, make sure you're focused on what types of questions are they going to help you answer. Now, in the Xanadu release, which just came out yesterday, there's this concept of views where you can add multiple activities and then toggle them on and off as you're doing your analysis. But I know most of you probably aren't going to be at the Xanadu release just yet. So maybe you want to start keeping it simple here and just add one when you create your first project. And that one might be state or assignment group. And then the next step is to add what we call breakdowns. What do we want to slice and dice the process data by? Maybe by category, assignment group. We might want to add things like priority in here or contact type or channel. I think I've got contact type. So I add a bunch of different breakdowns. This, you can have up to 10 breakdowns per project. These are going to help us slice and dice the map. The next step is to add those improvement opportunities. Remember the rule-based and the automated ones that we were talking about? As I mentioned earlier, we give you some of these improvement opportunities out of the box as part of our content pack, so you can import them right into your project. And then it's going to look at the ones that I've selected, say, hey, based on the activity and the data you selected, these ones fit, these ones don't. And then, of course, above and beyond the ones that we have here, if you wanted to add your own improvement opportunities to look for things like slow transitions, extreme durations, extra steps, or ping pong, we've got this guided setup experience to walk you through creating your own improvement opportunities above the ones that we provide. I'm not going to do that here today. I'm simply going to take the ones that we include as part of the content packs, come over here and say review in mine. You're going to get this screen that shows you all the things that you've configured. And at this point, you're done. You hit this mine button and you hit the sample mine button and away you go. That's it. That's what it takes. What's happening now is based on the criteria that we put in, the active is false and the contact type, it's going out. It's harvesting the relevant audit log data based on that filter criteria. It's then going to take that information, pass it off to the machine learning infrastructure in the same data center as your instance to do all the heavy duty number crunching. We do this to minimize any sort of performance impact on your instance itself. All the hard work happens there. When it's done, it spits the finished model back into your instance and away you go. This takes anywhere from 30 seconds to a couple of minutes, depending on the volume of data and the traffic with the machine learning infrastructure on at that given moment. But this is the piece. That's all it takes to get started. You could activate the plugin in your sub-production instance. If you have the audit log data there, you can do exactly what we just did. And you're going to start getting insights into your process data. So powerful, right? It's one of these things that one of the reasons why we're running this webinar is there's so many ServiceNow customers out there that don't know that they have this power in their hands and that they already have the skills they need to get started getting this next level of visibility into their projects. So that's the piece. So that's step 2. I'm going to let this finish here and just so you can see what gets generated for us. And then we'll jump over to another project and we'll just look at some of the different ways in the analyst workbench that you can use to start digging into your process mining data. So it's completed. We click this View in Workspace button here. And away we go. There's our project metrics visualizations. There's our improvement opportunities, both rule-based and automated, that help jumpstart us into our analysis. And then here's our visualized process map that we can start digging into. What did that take us? 3-4 minutes? If I wasn't so long-winded at the beginning with the slides, we could have had this whole section done, step 2 done in all of a 5-minute conversation. All right, so now that we have those, I'm just going to use a different project that I've got that's got a little bit more data and some filter criteria that I've set up already to help enable this part of the conversation. So let's move to step 3. Let's dig into our process data. First thing that I'll call out here, right? And in this case here, we mined 21,000 incidents, 1,500 routes to get to closure, average 8 days to get there. We've got our project metrics. All right, here's the closure time trend. Here's that histogram showing us the buckets of closure times and where the incidents fit. So a lot of them close between 0 and 4 days. Another subset of them close between 8 and 12 days. These immediately get generated for you. We've got our improvement opportunities down here, the visuals that are going to categorize the individual improvement opportunities by the types and the number of records and the KPIs they might be linked to. And then you've got the opportunities themselves. And just to kind of give you a sense here of those 2 flavors, the rule-based and the automated, I'll show you. This first one here is an example of a rule-based one. We specifically configured the solution to go look for scenarios in which these incidents touch the state of awaiting caller info. And what I can see here is it captured 38% of these incidents, or 8173, that touched that state at least once in their life cycle. And then probably most importantly, there's 42 years worth of time packaged up in those. So 42 years worth of time that we potentially could reclaim. Even if we get 1 or 2% back, that's going to be a win. So right from here, what can we do? Well, we can drill into the visualized workbench, that visualized process map, to start digging in and continuing this conversation with the data. All right, rule-based because we specifically called out the exact scenario we wanted to capture. And these are great for those situations where you have an idea about where there might be an inefficiency in your process, but you just don't have all the data you need to help you prioritize whether it's worth digging into or not. The next one on the list happens to be an example of a more automated improvement opportunity using one of those process pattern detectors that I was talking about earlier. It flagged rework on the in-progress state, meaning these 2,000 incidents went into the state of in progress, left it, and then came back to that state later on in their life cycle. And there's 33 years worth of time packaged up in these things, bouncing in and out of that in progress state. Again, right from here, we can drill into the analyst workbench for just those. These automated detectors or process pattern detectors and automated improvement opportunities are fantastic for those situations where you don't know what you don't know about your process data. We have these detectors for rework, so things that are going A, B, C, back to A. For ping pong, things that are going A, B over and over again. Very handy for assignment group analysis. We have a detector for slow transitions. So things, maybe 85% of your work is taking less than 2 hours to move from new to in progress, but there's another 1% that's taking longer than 8 days to make that transition. You might want to focus on those. The combination of both these automated and rule-based ones really help us get a jump start on where we should be focusing our analytics efforts, really help us get the data we need to prioritize what we should do next. And then right from here, what can we do? Well, we can drill into the workbench. So if I click here, it's going to take me to the visualized process map for just those 8173. You can see that here. Whoops. You can see that up here that I've got those 8173. And now that I've focused in on just these, I can start using the breakdowns. So looking at things like channel, assignment group, priority, category, any way that you've structured your data. Right? Remember when we created our project, we picked 4 or 5 of these to include in the project. And what these give you is kind of the volume and the velocity in which things are happening. So this additional context helps us find areas that we should focus in on. So for these 8173 that touch the state of awaiting caller info, let's look at the intake channel. I can see here that these first 2 channels, self-service and portal, are only taking about a week to close. But look at these ones that come in via email. They take an additional week. So maybe we want to focus in on those, and you can drill in and narrow it down to just those. Then we can start doing things like using the histograms to look for outliers. So I can see here, maybe I want to focus on the things that touch a waiting call info 2, 3, 4, or 5 times. I can focus in on just those. Because you're in that platform, you have that unique advantage of being able to get down to the detailed records themselves. As I mentioned earlier, this is where a lot of that actionable information lives. And if you have the rights to do so, you can start drilling into each of these and taking a look at them. You also have the ability to use some machine learning capabilities, like maybe doing some root cause analysis to start seeing if there's any common influencers that are driving things into this state of awaiting caller info. Or perhaps you want to start to harvest some of the gold that lives in that unstructured textual data using the clustering capability on the platform. And what I can see here is that I've got a whole bunch of these incidents that people are just trying to change their email address in their profile, right? So maybe I found an opportunity now that I want to follow up on using that clustering. And right from here, we're able to come in and say, hey, maybe I want to add a note and have somebody follow up on this and dig a little bit deeper. Or here's where I have that connection to continuing improvement management and automation center. I'm gonna close this loop in a second. I want you to see a couple of more capabilities inside of the workbench before I close the loop here. The first one that I want you to see is this transition filter, right? Where you can start coming in here and slicing and dicing the data by different route combinations. So maybe you want to look for scenarios where it's taking a short amount of time for us to actually do the work, to look for automation opportunities. So maybe we come in here and we say state is work in progress. And then we say, you know what, when that's eventually followed or directly followed by the state of resolved, state is resolved. But I only want to focus in on things in which is taking a short amount of time for us to move between these two states in the process. So what I can do now is I can add a constraint, and I can come in here and I can say longer than 2 minutes, but less than 1 hour. And I can say, okay, from step 1 to step 2 over here on the right, isolate the scenarios in which it's taking longer than 2 minutes and then less than 1 hour to move between these two steps in the process. And I can add that constraint. And why do I say longer than 2 minutes and less than 1 hour? Because if it's moving between these two things, work in progress from resolved in less than 2 minutes, you probably already automated that. But if it's taking longer than 2 minutes and less than an hour, it's not something that's going to be hard for somebody to solve. So you can add that constraint, you can apply, and this is going to focus the data there. These transition filters, really, really powerful in helping us isolate certain situations. And then the last thing that I'm going to show you here inside of the workbench, and again, there's so much more that we could cover. I highly recommend you dig into some of those other resources, is an area in which I see customers getting a lot of value, and it's using this comparative capability, right, to look at, in many cases, the impact of a process change. So maybe on the left-hand side here, I want to say focus in on the data prior to us making a process change. Maybe we made a process change on October 31st. Show me all the work that closed prior to October 31st. And then over here on the right-hand side of the screen, show me all the work that closed after October 31st, after the process change. And now I can start to get some stats about the impact of that change, but I can also start digging in and looking at kind of if there was any adverse effects of that process change, right? Maybe our high-level numbers are looking good, but there's things going on within the process itself that are eventually going to impact us down the road. So this comparison capability inside of the workbench is something that's really helpful for a lot of folks to help them understand the impact of a process change or where there might be opportunities. Okay. Now, step 4, closing the loop. All right. So as you're doing your digging and you're mining in here and you're slicing and dicing the data, you're going to find a bunch of different opportunities to improve. Right from this workspace, you have a direct connection to continual improvement management application that we were talking about, as well as automation center. And from here, you can create additional continual improvement initiatives, or you can link to existing continual improvement initiatives that you have out there. All right, so this insight here, great. I'm going to link it to this improvement initiative that's already open about reducing our resolution times by 25%. And then inside of the initiative itself, you have the ability to start aligning tasks, creating tasks for people to follow up on, linking impacted KPIs that are going to be important as we drive this initiative forward. And then you have your link back to your process mining project. So as people are continuing to focus on this initiative over time, they can drill back, take a look at the project, see some of the process data and some of the notes that we've added and some of the findings that we've had. These improvement initiatives, as you start to create them, there's actually a dashboard and a workbench that help us kind of track the progress of these, hold people accountable, reprioritize things. Right, so you've got this workbench that takes these initiatives and kind of holds people in the organization accountable to following up on them. It's a way of managing how people are following up on all this great analysis we're doing inside of process mining and how it's contributing to the overall improvements we're trying to make from an organizational perspective. All right, I know that was a lot. We covered a lot there. Few more things that we want to do. Well, first, let's take a look at the